All right, so this week we're super excited to talk about goal setting. And I'm sure some of you are like, oh, goal setting, like it's this again, right? And the reason why we chose to talk about it now was it's before the new year. So get a head start on your next year's goals instead of waiting for, December 31st. Hey, I'm setting my New Year's resolutions. It's funny to me that that's a constant theme still, because as studies and history has shown, those typically don't work because you stick it out for a couple of weeks and then you're done. And so kind of this mindset of constantly reevaluating your goals throughout the year, adjusting, changing, because you also evolve as a human over the course of a year. So that's going to change. And so we thought we would talk about goal setting right now for you to just kind of have it at the forefront of your mind, reflect on the goals you had for this last year, see if you achieved them, and maybe adjust and set new goals for yourself. So that's what today's episode is all about, goal setting. And we have a couple different approaches for setting these goals that might be helpful for you depending on how you operate. It's different for everybody. So we'll give you a couple different options and you can decide for yourself.
I like what you said though about goals. Like you have to constantly reevaluate.
Yeah.
You can't just have one set of goals and then you reach them. It's like, okay, done now. It's, this is a process and it's over and over. We talked in the past about the growth mindset and constantly improving and growing. And this goes right hand in hand with that of look at your goals, revise them. You change as a person, your goals are going to change,
Well, and then
new ones when you achieve them.
Yeah. And then you also avoid the trap of, well, I've achieved this goal. What next? Because you haven't thought about what's next. Right. I know for me, I kind of had that same thing. Like after I graduated college, I was like, oh, well, what next? Like I hadn't really set a specific goal for myself because I was so focused on this goal of graduating college and then you'll get a good job, And so I think it is kind of that, like you said, a process of thinking, okay, once I achieve this, then how am I going to push myself? It's not like you achieve this goal and then you've arrived and you're magically done. That's not how it works. There's constant goal setting, and it doesn't always have to be in the same area. Like you could have an academic goal, and then you could have a personal goal, and then you could have a health goal. And again, those are all going to be evolving and changing because as you get older, your body changes. As you get older, you learn different things. You might develop different interests. And so your goals are naturally going to change. So I think that's something to get in that mindset as well of, once I achieve my goals, I've arrived. Like that's not how it works.
So I totally am reminded by the movie Rapunzel, the Disney movie Rapunzel. Yeah. I mean, I have kids, so don't judge. Yeah. I don't just watch Disney movies for the fun of it.
Hey, I like Disney movies. They've got good morals.
But Rapunzel is one of my favorite ones. Like when the kids are like, all right, what movie is it? I'm like, Rapunzel, I love that one. Yeah. But it reminds me of when she's just talking to Flynn and she's kind of scared. Like, what if I do? What if, I get my dream and it's not all I thought it was? And he's like, oh, it will be. And she's like, well, then what do I do if it is? And he's like, that's the beauty of it. You get to go find a new dream.
It's
so
true.
I love that. Such a great wise quote from
way to go, Flynn Rider. But it's true. And it is that same thinking, because that might also be the flip side of, I've achieved this goal and it didn't fulfill me the way I thought it would. So now what's next? Right. And so, you're constantly coming up with a new dream. And I think people sometimes limit themselves because they think, that's too unattainable, or, I could never. Well, no, switch that narrative and say, I can do this. And then what's next? Like the sky's the limit. The only limit that you have is the one that you place on yourself. If you put this glass ceiling over yourself and never try to push past it, then you're going to stay stuck.
Right.
But you have the power to push that and achieve what you want to.
The key is breaking down those goals that seem big into smaller, attainable goals, actionable steps. So that I think that's a good segue into SMART goals, Angela. You said you were going to talk about SMART goals a little bit. I want to hear, tell us what SMART goals are.
Yeah, so SMART goals, it's an acronym, right? So each of the letters means something. And I'm sure most of you have probably heard this. This is kind of the standard for goals that I had learned since, elementary school. When you set a goal, you want it to be SMART. So S means it's specific. So you want it to be specific so that you can be more effective in your planning. If you just say, I want to graduate college, like, okay, that's great. But is there a specific college that you want to go to? Be specific in that. Say, I want to attend Harvard University. Awesome. So now you know which university you want to go to. So you can narrow it down to know, what do they require? What is the admissions process? What is it that I need to have? If you have a specific goal in mind, it makes it a little more real, and you can have those action steps. So then the M is measurable. So then that's where you define what evidence will prove that you're making progress, and then reevaluate when necessary. So, for example, the college, like measurable, I want to go to Harvard University by 2026, right? And then from there, you can break it down into those steps and then reevaluate along the way of, oh, is this working? Oh, maybe not. Now I need to adjust it and do this. And then A, achievable or attainable. It's kind of attainable, achievable. They're basically the same thing. So make sure that you can reasonably accomplish that goal within the certain time frame. So as you're setting these measurable steps, make sure that it's also realistic, right? That it's attainable. You can achieve it within that time frame, because you also don't want to burn yourself out in the process of this goal. So give yourself enough time, but also kind of stretch yourself. Does that make sense? So you're not limiting yourself, but you're not like not doing enough to make it to that step.
You don't want to reach burnout.
Exactly. You don't want to do overwhelm or burnout. And so you want to make sure that it's an attainable time frame for you. And then relevant. So your goals should align with your personal values as well as your long-term objectives. So yeah, if your goal is to eventually be a lawyer, okay, cool. I want to go to Harvard Law School. That's super in line with where you want to be, right? And does Harvard align with your personal values? So that's also something to ask yourself in the R of the SMART goals is, right, does it align with my values, and is it going to help me with my long-term objective?
Right. If it's not relevant to your life plan,
yeah,
then you might stick with it for a bit. But if it's something that's time consuming,
yeah,
you're going to stop working toward it. If you're like, well, what's the point? Like, yes, it was a cool goal, but if in the end it's not relevant to your life plan, not as likely you're going to stick with it.
Exactly. And so that's why you want to make sure that it's aligned in all areas. And then the last one, T, is time-based. So you're setting that realistic end date, and then using that for the task prioritization and your motivation, right?
Give yourself a deadline.
Yeah, you're giving yourself a deadline. So kind of like we said, and it kind of goes hand in hand with measurable, right? Like it's measurable and it's time-based, because as you're measuring it and putting a time limit on it, you're seeing if those measurable goals and steps are going to fit within that time frame. And that's where that constant reevaluation comes in. Oh shoot, if this is my deadline, I need to be here and I'm not. And so what can I do to get there? And that's kind of a constant reevaluation process. So this acronym is just a good one, because it just reminds you of, I need it to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. If I just have a vague goal, yeah, you're more likely not to stick to it. And if you don't have specific measurable steps to get there, again, you're less likely to stick to it. And so this is just a way of kind of holding yourself accountable. And I know what I've heard from, goal setting webinars and speeches, things that I've attended or heard, they all say, write it down somewhere where you can see it often, so that it's at the forefront of your mind, because it's easy to just, in your day-to-day muck and going through the motions, it's easy to forget your dreams. Like, oh, my goal is to get here, but I'm so tired today. I'm so annoyed. I'm so this, like the day was hard. But if you have that goal at the forefront of your mind, even if it's a tiny baby step, like, hey, I did something today towards that goal. and even if it's like 20 minutes that you set aside for, oh, hey, I want to get into Harvard. I know I have an admissions essay coming up. I only have the capacity to do 20 minutes today. Hey, that's 20 minutes that you did versus not doing. And so having that goal visible can be kind of that motivation as well, because like I said, it's easy to just get lost in the day to day and forget about your dreams, because it's just easier to, tell yourself, oh, well, that's never going to happen because XYZ, or today was hard, or, it's also a matter of switching that narrative of what you're telling yourself. I can do this. This is what I want. What am I doing today to get there? Like if your dream is to dance on Broadway one day, okay, what are you doing every day to get there? What are you studying? What technique? What practice? Are you going to the gym? Are you fueling your body right? Like it's all the little things that kind of add up over time.
But you need a plan, because we've all heard the quote, a goal without a plan is just a wish.
Exactly.
So,
and I think that's where the SMART goals come in, is that it's your plan. It's your outline for your dream.
I like Dr. Edwin Locke's goal setting theory.
Yeah. So tell us about that goal setting theory and how
it really does. It goes hand in hand with the SMART goals. I believe the same principles, just maybe a little bit different approach. So his whole idea is that there's a relationship between how difficult and how specific a goal is, and how well a person or a team performed. Like there's a relationship between those things. So having like goals that are bound to these constraints that we talk about bring about greater success in achieving them, versus just having open-ended just dreams and wishes. Really is what it is, without actually having a clear plan of action to go about it. So his 5 points, just to summarize what it is: clarity, challenge, commitment, feedback, and complexity.
Okay.
So
4 C's and an F.
Yeah. So not as easy to remember as SMART goals. So if you're somebody who's like, I just want something easy that I can remember, SMART, that's super easy. It's an acronym. So Locke's theory, just to kind of go in more depth on each one, but clarity, I feel like that really does it aligns with the S from SMART goals specific. So you have to have something that's clear, and actually maybe it combines specific and measurable. The clarity part, it has to be clear, it has to be measurable. You have to have clarity on what your goal is. So you kind of talked about it a little bit, but like, hey, I want to be healthier. What does that mean? Like, how do you know if you've achieved that? Am I healthier? I don't know. Be more specific. I really like visualization. And Angeli, you and I had done this a while back, just with the school, with like the business stuff, is visualizing like your future self, right? Like, and what does that look like? So, okay, in the future, when I'm healthier, what are the habits I'm going to be sticking with? What weight am I going to be? What am I going to look like? That's going to help you have more clarity to your goal. So maybe one part of that is, I'm going to be 15 pounds lighter when I'm healthier. So, okay, so that's a specific goal now that you can work toward. You have a specific objective of losing 15 pounds. Okay, that's one of the many things, right?
Yeah, or for some people it can be, hey, I will walk up the stairs without being winded. It doesn't have to be so extreme either. It can be, or I know I'm healthier when I've cut out soda and I'm drinking, 64 ounces of water a day. Like,
but that's clear and that's measurable.
Exactly. So my point is like, I think sometimes we think that our goals have to be so intense and so like, hey, I want like, but even simple things, even the little day-to-day things like, hey, I need to drink more water. How am I going to get there? Because it's one thing to just tell yourself, oh, drink more water.
Right.
But that's not always just straightforward, because you have a busy day, you have, so that's my point in bringing that up, is even for the little steps to get there, you can even kind of break those down into separate goals.
Right. So challenge is the next one. No one really gets excited about completing a super easy goal.
Yeah.
Like if it's something that you're basically already doing, or it's just like, okay, you need to have an appropriate level of challenge.
Yeah.
It can't just be
to motivate you.
Yeah, it's got to be motivating. It's got to be an appropriate level. It's got to be achievable. So I think that goes along with the A from the SMART goals, but coming up with something that's going to get you excited about achieving it, but still be attainable. So I guess going back to like the 15-pound example, like you could easily break that down. Instead of saying, all right, I want to lose 15 pounds in 5 months. Well, break it down. You can do 3 pounds every month for the next 5 months. So it's smaller, attainable goals. And then you're still achieving something challenging when it's all said and done.
Well, and like you said, it goes back to that kind of intrinsic reward of, wow, I did something hard. Like that was hard and I did it. So in those moments of when you're questioning yourself or your ability, you can look and reflect back on that and say, but no, I've already done this. This was hard and I did it. And so it kind of is that perpetual motivation of when you're then facing something new that feels insurmountable, you can say, okay, but that felt insurmountable and I did it. And so I think that's also a factor of why they need to be challenging, because then it's that reaffirmation to yourself of like, oh, hey, I can do that. That's awesome. You know?
Completely. So I agree. I think it needs to be an appropriate level of challenge.
Yes.
Like you talked about, it can't be something impossible.
Yeah.
You know, with an impossible time constraint, be realistic about it, but push yourself a little bit.
So like an example of like an impossible, unrealistic goal is, hey, I don't exercise right now. I'm not taking care of myself, but in 2 months, I want to climb Everest. You know, like that's maybe a little bit unrealistic, because most people that are climbing Everest have trained for years. And, you know, there's so many depths and layers that go into that. And so if your goal is to climb Everest, okay, make it realistic. Maybe I'll climb Everest in 5 years.
And break it down into the smaller actionable steps now.
Exactly. So
what is it going to take to do that?
Exactly. Yeah. So this year I'll focus on this. The next year I'll focus on, you know, breathing and altitude training, because that's a huge part of it. And then, you know, the next year I'll focus on it, or whatever it may be. That's just you know, climbing Everest always feels like this insurmountable goal, because people die attempting to do it. Right. So that's why I throw Everest out there as an example. But yeah, I mean, obviously at a lower scale in your personal life, like, just make sure that you give yourself the time, because then if you're not giving yourself enough time, then you're going to that, well, I'm a failure. I failed as well, you know?
100%. Yeah. The next C is commitment in Locke's theory. Believe the goal, right? Believe that it's achievable. I think that's the biggest part about that is, you know, you're not going to be committed to something that you don't think you actually can achieve. So commit yourself wholeheartedly to whatever it is that you decide. If it's the Everest thing, you know, break that into your smaller goals and believe that it can be done.
Yeah.
Commit to it.
Yeah. Or those students who, so I had a cool opportunity. I got to go to a luncheon where it was first generation college students. So, you know, they're the first ones in their family that have gone to college. And so for them, that was, you know, breaking the generational norm. And it was so cool, because I'm sure at one point in their lives, they were told, well, you're not smart enough, or our family just doesn't do that. Like, how dare you dream of this thing, you know? But they were committed enough. They made it to college. They're there. They're doing it. And it's the same thing, that if you're committed to that goal, even if people tell you, well, that's not possible, if you're committed to it, that alone can give you the drive to achieve it.
I agree.
Simple as that.
I love that. I agree. Next thing is the F, the weird one. It's not a C, it's an F. Feedback. Feedback is the fourth thing here. Make sure you're getting consistent feedback to show the progress that you're making. So that is motivating in and of itself, is when you can see the progress over the course of time that you're making toward your goal. And I think this especially applies to larger goals. And maybe I'll go right into the next one too, along with it, which is complexity. Breaking down bigger items so that every actionable step is 100% visible. It's like a map.
Yeah.
You know, okay, this is step 1, this is step 2. Everything that is actionable needs to be written down as a step in the process.
Yeah.
So, that feedback throughout that process, you know, that you're giving yourself, what progress am I making? Where am I in this process? What can I change? How can I reevaluate? You know, as you go through that journey, like we said before, is things might change a little bit. So you'll know after you're getting through step 1, step 2, step 3 of your goals, like, okay, does this need to adjust slightly so that I am setting myself up for success to achieve the bigger picture?
Yeah.
So,
sure.
but that last one though is huge. It's just complexity, breaking it down so every actionable step is visible. I mean, that's huge, because we can get so carried away with just looking at that, you know, 10,000 foot elevation view of what our goal is. And then that's when that overwhelm can set in.
Totally.
Because like, well, this is like the big picture of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And you just get so caught up in it because it feels so big, but
Yeah.
that's fine. Complex goals are great.
Yeah.
Break
Just
them
have a
down.
plan for them. Yeah.
break them down to the smallest actionable step. What is my very next step that I need to take today?
Yeah.
And it becomes so much more manageable
toward that. And it's interesting to me that for both of those, Locke's theory as well as the SMART goals, both mentioned write it down. And it's not just a type it out on your computer. It's a physical write it down, keep it in a visual place where you can see it. Because, and I need to find these studies. I'm always referencing these studies where science says, you know, there's something about the physical act of writing it down that just helps you connect more.
I'm reading this right now.
Yeah.
This is David Allen, Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity. So he's big on that. Write it down, write it down, write it down. Because when you got things just swimming around in your head, the more something's just in your head, the more mental focus you put on it. And it's always just thinking about it. Like you're
not taking the action.
Thinking about it. Yeah. Write it down. So it, you know, it comes back to that map. Like there might be things that this is future project, like not necessarily something I'm worried about now, but if it's in your head, write it down.
Yeah.
You will come back to it, you know, write that down. It's Valley Ranch, HVR, write that down. Inside joke, you guys. Sorry. Angelie and I have been friends for quite some time, so we have a lot of those. But
if you're curious what that's referencing, look up the Hidden Valley Ranch skit, Melissa McCarthy,
Saturday Live. We're goofballs too. Yes, we run a school, but we can be goofballs. Yeah, right. We can have a sense of humor. So yeah, that's another one. I think probably maybe another podcast episode to get into that. Totally. With productivity, but absolutely write it down. That's something that has helped me tremendously, and I think it could help you as well. So
for sure. And so for those listening, you know, comment, let us know what goal setting strategies work for you. You know, what works for one person doesn't always work for the next, and so we'd love to connect and see what strategies and goal setting things work for you, and, you know, simple little tips to share with everybody, because I think as we all set goals, we're just going to improve as a society, because then we're improving ourselves personally, stretching ourselves, growing, learning, and we can all benefit from helping each other out. So share your favorite goal setting tip as well. We'd love to hear it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks you guys for listening today. We'll see you next time.